Welcome back, AP. All right. So I know I'm posting this one a little bit late, but I apologize. I was celebrating someone's life at a funeral yesterday and just was extremely busy. But we're going to do, just because it's a little bit later, we're going to keep this one as short as possible, in the neighborhood of like 15 to 16 minutes. Okay? So we left off in class talking about Napoleon the Third, right? The Second French Republic, going through all of our phases of the French government and things like that. And we talked about how the assembly that Napoleon had created after his election, after he gave them certain conservative things like more introduction or like limiting the voting rights of some of the people, right? Of increasing the role of the Catholic Church in education, which had been the wealthy model of education for hundreds of years already. The assembly refused to rewrite the Constitution the way he wanted so he could run it for a second term. So what does he do? He pulls a Napoleon of any kind, of any number, throws a coup d'etat of the military, right? Suppresses some middle-class rebels, regrants universal male suffrage, and they have what's called, what we talked about in class, a plebiscite. Plebiscite. There might be an A in there. Now, it's supposed to say on the board right there, but I just got to tell you these numbers real quick, okay? So, following the plebiscite after he actually had the ran the coup d'etat, 92% of all the French people voted for him to be the president for 10 years. When they held another plebiscite at the end of that 10 years, 97% voted him a hereditary emperor. So it's very obvious that the people of France really, really love him. Now, ironically enough, though, the liberals and the conservatives are a little bit out on Napoleon the Third, right? For a lot of different reasons, okay? So, because he had mixed success and failure, right? So, he had a great economy and built the railroads that the industrialism of the continent actually made, was like, that industrialism on the continent that made industrialism on the continent possible. So you remember when we were talking about industrialism coming from Great Britain, right? We were talking about the things that were standing in the way of places like France from industrializing. A lot of it had to do with limited economies, picking up the pieces after the fall of Napoleon, like a lot of different factors. And how corporate banks are going to come together and grant these limited liability loans and things like that to try and encourage companies to lay these railroads and help industrialize the continent. Napoleon was the ruler of France when he made these things possible. That's why I have these corporate banks right here. He hires Haussmann to rebuild Paris, right? We talked about Haussmann already. But that was a Napoleon the Third initiative. That increased sewage systems, decreased death rates, increased public health codes, right? Zoning restrictions, military parades, beautiful city, equal height of buildings, right? So unemployment is going to decline. Wages are going to rise along with inflation. Good times are going on in Napoleon the Third's early phases, right? Now, the big thing is, though, everybody's very, very well aware of this. If you now have universal male suffrage, the one group of people that you got to pacify as best you can is the urban worker, right? Because if you don't pacify the urban worker, those same people that are going to try and throw the barricades up like they did pre-Haussmann, right, may actually come together and may start doing these things again. So what does he do? He grants them certain rights that drives the conservatives nuts, all right? So also a lot of the liberals, it drives them nuts as well. So he allows them to strike and form unions, right? So what's the one problem with Napoleon right now? Napoleon the Third has one issue. He can't make everybody happy, all right? But he's doing his best to make everybody happy, like a good leader should, right? So he pushes for more equal representation in the National Assembly. He encourages notable Frenchmen of all political areas and of all political ideals to run for election in the National Assembly so he can have a more equally represented body. Times were great up until about 1860. Liberals are going to be the ones that kind of knock the keystone out of this whole thing because they begin to denounce a nationalist Napoleon. Now, if you look at Napoleon's ideas, he's much more of a nationalist than he is anything else. He's not as much of a liberal. He's not as much of a conservative. He's not as much of any of those things. He's much more of a nationalist. He has the belief of the French people at heart, right? But he's also more of a nationalist when it comes to other countries as well. He believes areas of Italy should be independently run. He believes that parts of the Holy Roman Empire should be independently run, right? He believes that he sees a lot of people out there that are being ruled over by other, like, overlord oppressors, right? Well, these liberals are going to be very upset when some problems are going to start arising with Italy and Prussia. All right, so because these ideas that Napoleon had about like, oh, well, we're a nationalist state. Why can't other people have these things? Well, let's help Italy actually try to boot Austria out of there a little bit because they're these big, gruesome Habsburg post-Congress of Vienna jerks, right? Well, the liberals are going to begin to push him down a little bit. And as Napoleon once said, public opinion always wins the last victory, right? So to keep those liberals happy, he gives even more liberal reforms, more constitutions that limit his power, right? Which is not something a great ruler wants to do, but it's a great ruler thing that he thought he had to do, right? The problem with Napoleon's ruling is you're seeing democracy with universal male suffrage meet head on with chaotic times, right? Which we see in our country all the time, right? Like during chaos, it doesn't matter how great the democracy is, things are going to be very tumultuous, right? And what I mean, like a big thing about that is just keep that in your notes and a little star next to it because it's coming up later in 1870, a war with Prussia, right? Known as the Franco-Prussian War, okay? So you're going to witness a lot of just chaos ensue with this, like these democratic principles and how they're very weak when it comes to times of all-out war, all right? So here we go. So we're moving on from Napoleon now, right? And now we're getting into nation building in Italy, okay? So we got two countries to talk about their nationalism movements. And then we're going to talk about like a modernization of Russia and like a couple of other things in the nationalism unit. You guys are going to start creating your own nationalities. We'll get there in a sec. Now, ow. Go ahead and start in your mind thinking of people you would want in a group, okay? So you guys are going to all like link up together. There are going to be 4 groups of you total, okay? Well, no, wait, 5 groups of you total, okay? So Italy isn't the best example of progressive nation building, but it does represent the ideas and the trends of nationalism. And the reason why we say it's not the best example of like progressive nation building is because Italy, even after its nationalism movement, had a ton of problems, right? A lot of problems. Mass Italian immigration, huge gap in the poor and the wealthy between southern agrarian Italy and northern industrial Italy, right? A lot of issues. Now, before 1850, though, Italy, why the heck isn't Italy a country anyway, right? So when you look at a lot of these other places, Great Britain, Austria, the Holy Roman Empire, France, Spain, Portugal, these places have basically been the way they are on the map going on for, 700 years, right? Give or take. Yeah, about 700 years-ish. But why not Italy? Why not? Why wasn't Italy able to just come out of all the ancient stuff as just Italy? Well, because before 1850, Italy went through 2 specific phases. And we talked about a little bit of this at one point, right? The ancient Roman Empire phase is one of them. So when the ancient Roman Empire came crashing down, Italy was left with basically no infrastructure and got separated into a lot of informal states, right? Which leads us into our medieval through the Renaissance. Wow, Renaissance. All right, so that's supposed to be a C. Renaissance phase, which is the divided Italian states, all right? So at no point other than the Roman Empire was Italy ever really a national identity unit in and of itself. Even as the Romans used to take over other areas, they used to speak different languages throughout the Italian peninsula. They didn't necessarily learn Latin immediately. And Italian was a new language that had actually been birthed later on from the mixing of Latin with these other languages, all right? So, but the medieval phase through the Renaissance phase are the divided Italian states, when Venice is a republic of its own. Milan was a mercenary mercenary state under the Sforzas, but still, they were a state of themselves. The Papal States were a state of themselves. Tuscany was a state of itself under Florence, right? So when you really, really look at these things, the medieval model stayed relevant all the way up until 1815, right? So, I was going to say Napoleon. Italy had never been universally conquered by anyone and remained divided for a really long time because they had some success with it. During the Renaissance, would you not call that a success? They have massive amounts of money coming in. They're the hub of all the art and intelligence going on in the entire European continent. Well, yeah, so people during that phase were probably like, oh, why do we need to nationalize? We're doing just fine. Well, things are going to change, right? Congress of Vienna in 1850 really, really, really blows things up because that's when Napoleon was expelled, all right? Because here's the thing. Napoleon took over Italy just like he took over everywhere else, right? Napoleon took over Italy. He reorganized the German territories into the Confederation of the Rhine, right? Like, so still every time I say the word Rhine, I just want to say Sentinel on the Rhine just because it sounds so cool talking about Prussia post-Congress of Vienna. Now, anyway, but the northern provinces are going to be completely reorganized in particular, right? So you're going to have your northern provinces of Lombardy, which is Milan, Venetia, which is Venice, and which are both going to be taken by Austria under Metternich, right? So Austria takes two of the three biggest Italian northern states out there, right? Sardinia and the Piedmont, the Kingdom of Sardinia and the Piedmont, are going to unite together at one point, and they're going to be under the rule of an Italian monarch. This is mainly due, and by the way, Sardinia is that big island off the coast of Italy, right? So, like, if we look at this real quick, I think I already have. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So when you're looking at, oh, look at these guys. We're gonna talk. That's better. All right. So anyway, now, so really quick, there you go. So these two are Piedmont and Sardinia. These two were taken by Austria. These two were independently chopped up via a bunch of other areas in Europe. The Papal States remained independent, and then the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies down there was controlled by France. All right, so, and view and present. There we go. So the main guiding principle that you need to come out of this little section with is just the fact that Italy was still crazy divided, right? So Sardinia, the Piedmont, oh, I got that. Florence shared north-central Italy with several other smaller states, okay? The papacy controlled the Rome in the center, and then France still controlled southern Italy, including Naples and Sicily, all right? So here we go. These guys, very, very important when we're talking about nation building in Italy, all right? So particularly this man. Not so much this man, but this man, very important. Because this guy plants the seed of the idea, right? So between Congress of Vienna in 1815 and the failed revolutions of 1848, don't ever forget those things, the idea of a united Italy grew at a massive pace. It was the trend. It was the it thing to think about. Early figures when it comes to Italian unification include guys like Giuseppe Mazzini, all right? Giuseppe Mazzini is this man right here. He's the one that preaches a liberal democratic republic with universal male suffrage and rule by the people, right? So he's preaching the idea of no figureheads, no monarchs, no presidents, a liberal democratic republic with universal male suffrage, right? Where we can all come together and create the ideas of a united Italy. I like your ideas, big fella. Too bad you're going to be exiled at one point, and a lot of other things are going to happen to you. But just keep him in the back of your mind. Giuseppe Mazzini is a very important figure. Then you've got Vincenzo Gioberti, all right? He preached, get it, because he's a Catholic priest, a federation of states under a progressive pope. Well, that's kind of an aggressive idea, because how progressive can one of your conservative sectors really be, right? So others are going to preach the idea of an autocratic kingdom under the lead of Sardinia Piedmont, who is doing great under that model. Out of all of those other Italian states, the Sardinia Piedmont model of a king and a leader was the one pushing forward the best, okay? They had more economic prosperity, more democratic and diplomatic relations with other countries. They had several leading figures in their area as well, so they kind of had their best foot forward. Also, geographically speaking, they were closer to the wealth of Europe, which made it much more possible for them to actually push forward if given the opportunity, right? So, what am I at right now? And I'm at 14 minutes right there. So I'll tell you what, we're going to stop it right there. And then we're going to get into all of our other guys tomorrow. Count Cavour, Victor Emmanuel II, Giuseppe Garibaldi. If we could bang out Italian unification tomorrow in one class period, that would be phenomenally impressive. So let's see what we can do. Deal? But I will see you guys later on, all right? Talk to you all then. Have a good one.